But first, we have to make sure that legislators understand what the amendments are and go from there. So, Fred, can you just explain why this needs to be done tonight?
Well, would it be helpful for Sheila and Amanda to pass out additional copies? I know they were circulated on the 11th of July. Would it help to have additional copies in front of you? The local law that you have in your table for Ledge 2 is the one that was circulated through the committees last month and this month. There are some proposed amendments that I think that Mr. Foley is asking that I walk everybody through. So I'm asking, would it be helpful to have those amendments in front of you as, I assume, Mr. Foley, you want me to walk people through this?
Yes, if you could. I mean, I'll discuss the amendments, and then you can say what they are. We'll go from there. We'll kind of
So you'll start and then I'll explain?
Right, beautiful.
Let's just have
We'll tag team them.
Yeah, yeah. If I may suggest, is that if we're going to have Fred explain them, is it necessary to do it that way?
Well-
To have Brian say these and then you?
I think someone has to offer them up.
I would be, I can go through them, because
And then
somebody
Brian.
has to go through these, unfortunately, one at a time. And if you want to listen to me for the next 20 minutes, I'll be happy to do that. Then we can take questions as we...
No, Ryan will go faster than
Right.
you. Ryan will go faster than me. This is not criticism.
No,
for you.
no, I understand. I understand.
Yeah, these are the ones that have been circulated, and they were discussed in government office. They've been in the box. They've been circulated. So it's nothing new in that respect, but does have to be done.
So Fred, these do have to be done out loud. We can't just say, legislators, here are the edits that were made. We want to offer all of these edits up as one group amendment and go from there.
I'm smiling because everybody knows how particular I am, right?
Right.
So since I'm that particular, it needs to go through one at a time. And the example I would give is when you have a budget amendment, what do? You list the accounts, the increases and the decreases. This is very similar to that. I know it's dry, dull, and boring. One way to do it is to do it this way. Consider the amendments tonight. The other way is to look at these, adopt them, have them go back through a special meeting to set a date and time for a public hearing sometime later in August. But you heard the chairman talk about the vacancy, I'm sorry, not the vacancy review group, but the group has been put together to start interviewing candidates for the administrator. If my information is accurate, I think the interviews are going to start on the 7th and 8th of August. So it would be better, in my opinion, to have it done today rather than have it done at the end of August, because you're going to want the new administrator candidates to have the most recent edited local law, I think. That's my thoughts.
Okay. So,
Mr. Russell,
Just to clarify, the plan is on the 8th and
Thank you.
Yeah, that's not relevant to this. Oh, thank you.
Well, my point was it needs to be
Yeah,
done sooner rather than
we
later,
understand.
so-
So Ryan?
okay, so we'll start this, and we'll see where it goes. The fourth line on page 1 says repealing, it was changed from amending, which was deleted. Fred, are we good so far?
We're good so far?
Beautiful.
What he's doing is taking the page number, there's numbers on the left-hand side.
Point of process. If someone has a question, raise your hand. Otherwise, let's just go through these, because I
Very
think, Pat has a question.
I have a question, not a question. I'm gonna make a motion just to bundle this. I know it's against your advice, but this seems ridiculous to go through this line by line if we don't need to. And you can, I can make the motion if no one seconds it, that's great, but.
I'll second it.
So the motion is to adjust the local law as distributed, with the specific changes of deletions and additions, and as previously discussed in government operations and placed in the box. Okay.
Do it.
Okay. Do we have a second? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I-
Second.
Okay, Mr. Denson. Okay.
We also went over this here, if I recall. I don't remember if it was a Ways and Means or whatever. But there was a meeting that we went over, we had like this stuff up on the screen and we changed.
Yeah, that was a different thing.
That was a
but
different
yeah.
thing, yeah.
But yes, we have, your point is well taken, which is, we have talked about this,
Yeah.
and talked about it, and talked about it. Mr. Lattimore?
I brought up in committee my concern about the administrator would be the risk manager of the insurance program of the county government. Now, I've been around for a little bit, and I've worked with different managers, and some managers have a feel for that, and, you know, like we have a consortium, I'd like to have the county manager work with, I see Mr. Foley shaking his head no, but it's a, you know, one of our large purchases is our health bill, and another large one is the risk management, the workers' comp program. And some administrators need some assistance in regards to that, and, you know.
Okay, can you reference where it is,
That's,
what we talk about here?
Page 3.
it says 34, 35, and 36.
Page 3,
I think.
line start.
Got it.
But if this is an indication as the all-powerful one person without some kind of input from the board, I don't know. I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, I think the way this reads, and we can change this certainly, but the way this reads it is to assume line authority and supervision, over risk, a number of things, risk management. This is not a change, other than it's been combined into one thing, as I remember.
That's correct.
This
Well,
this has been the case.
It's in red, so is that
The
not a
change-
change, Fred, or no?
The change is that, well, Fred, you can address it.
Well, the change, if you look over in the right-hand side of the page, it shows you which paragraphs were combined in this case. From the local law that's taped to your desk, I believe it's going to be paragraphs J, K, and L. Those 3 paragraphs were combined into one new paragraph. It just seemed to make more sense, rather than have 3 separate, just put it into one paragraph.
Any other comments? Are you ready to vote on the motion? Joe, you had a comment?
I think we should at least consider this, as being a member of the search committee. It did come up that you know, when we redefined for the job search what the duties of the administrator would be, that they would have ownership of the budget, and that they would ultimately be, I guess, responsible for it. But there was some talk that perhaps what's stated in here, like in page 2, 44 and 45, where it specifically talks about the administrator being a budget officer. And then later on in page 3, lines 6 through 13. And there was some discussion that maybe based on this law, that there was a discrepancy between what the will was at one point and what the law is saying here. I'm probably not explaining myself very clearly, but.
You may be very clear, I just don't understand.
Well, budget
This
office-
is not a change. There's no change in this. This is even the language here is, this is exactly what
Right, what
was
we
before.
wondered was, I think, were we at cross purposes with what we were actually seeking in an administrator?
I don't know, it'd be up to the body if you want to amend it.
Do you recall that?
Yeah. Do we have an employee now that is called the budget officer, or not?
No.
Okay. That's
A
where-
budget officer is the person that, in effect, the CFO of the organization.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that person does the budget.
That's where we were going.
Right.
Is we wanted that more clarified, that this person is not solely responsible for making the budget and saying, here it is. This person is solely responsible for taking the budget and moving it, implementing it with the
Well,
department
and
heads
presenting
and
it.
whatnot.
Someone has to
Presenting.
present it to
Yes,
the
that's-
legislature.
We don't
That's what
want,
this person does.
we don't want a potential new administrator to look at this and think that they're the ones that are making the budget, owning the budget, administering the budget. That's where we came from.
I don't know, do you have language to, Mr. Mahonik?
I sat on a couple of these discussions, and I think we've beaten this thing up pretty good. And I think that they've been very receptive to the feedback they've gotten from people on that committee. I just assume we get this thing passed and let's keep moving forward instead of getting tied down into the weeds where we don't really need to be.
That's fine by me. But like I say, it was brought up during that meeting, and I just thought now's the time, if we're ready to pass it, is that something we need to take a look at? If the body doesn't feel there's a conflict, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So you're not offering an additional amendment?
I'm not sure what the amendment would be.
Okay. Right, that was my question. Okay. Mr. Foley?
Yeah, I have one additional amendment to add, or more accurately delete. It's going to be on page 4. And that's going to be, let's see here, line 23 into line 24. So that paragraph, starting at 21, what's in red, says the annual performance review shall be chaired by the chair of Government Operations Committee, who shall be responsible for developing a framework for performance review that will be approved by the committee and by the administrator. I'd like to remove "and by the administrator" and just keep it as the committee.
Okay.
And I have spoken about this with Fred, just to get clarification why the administrator would approve of their own performance review, and just seemed odd, so I do offer that.
Well, it's not, would be quite the contrary. It would be odd for a chief executive or a senior person in any organization not to have input into how the review is done. However, if you want to make that, let's handle this separately, if that's okay. If you want to make that as a motion.
Yes, but, I mean.
I'll second that.
Okay. I mean, it's responsible for developing a framework for performance review. They're not responsible for any framework of their own performance. They don't get to sign off on it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, right. So
Right.
the motion is to strike that, and we have a second.
Right.
So is there discussion to fundamentally to remove the participation of the administrator into the process, the framework, the input into his or her evaluation? That's the impact of this. Mr. Dennison?
They're not evaluating themselves, they're just basically helping determine what the framework of their evaluation would be, right?
Right, that's this wording. But-
Well, because I've asked the question, what about if they disagree with that framework when the legislature wants the framework in place?
Well, then I think you got a bigger problem.
Considering what's happened with our.
Okay, let's let Mr. Mahonik speak.
I believe there's a motion on the floor to offer these as a bundle, and there's been no amendments
Yeah,
a second on an amendment that I've heard yet, so.
Yeah, there was.
Who had the second?
Yeah,
Tim Lattimore.
Mr.
Oh,
Lattimore.
okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's vote on the amendment, and then let's vote on the package. So the amendment is to strike the administrator is participating in the framework for evaluation. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
You want a roll call?
Can we leave the?
Well, we may need a roll call because of way to vote, so.
All set?
Yep.
Okay, voting on the amendment. Tucker Whitman?
No.
Andy Dennison?
No.
Ben Vitale?
I would ask for some clarification, because I'm wondering if everybody understands this, what they're voting on. Voting on
Switch my vote.
if you're agreeing with the amendment or not, and if that's the case, I'm voting no.
It's on
Yeah,
the
that
amendment.
is correct. We're voting to, the amendment is to strike the administrator from the process.
So your vote's no?
Yes.
That's the change.
Grant Kyle?
No.
Paul Pickty?
Yes.
Aileen McNabb Coleman?
No.
Joe DeForest?
No.
Terry Baxter?
Yes.
Joseph Bennett?
Yes.
Frank Reginelli?
No.
Patrick Mahonik?
No.
Timothy Lattimore?
Yes.
Michael Diddy is excused. Ryan Foley?
Yes.
Keith Batman?
No.
Defeated.
Okay, are we ready to vote on the package then, as presented? Hearing no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Lattimore is opposed. Okay. See, that was better than easier than we thought. We will need an executive session, but before we do an executive session, let's discuss the, whatever the action, the tax break action, whatever that's called. Fred, if you could bring us up to speed on that?
So the governor has signed Chapter 85 of the laws of 2017. That's been distributed to everybody. That act has three parts. I'm just going to go through the three parts fairly quickly. The one we're interested in is Part B. The first part basically sets up, Part A sets up a grant program for small businesses, farms, owners of multiple dwellings, and homeowners associations who have, and municipalities who have been damaged by the storms. The storm is defined as a event that occurred between April 1st, 2017 and July 1st, 2017. It's primarily directed to the Big Lake. In Part A, there's some relief for the storm damage that occurred in 2017. So that's Part A. Part C is some income tax breaks for property owners whose property was damaged in this storm. And again, the time frame is April 1st of 17 to July 1st of 17. They're potentially eligible for some breaks on their income tax purposes. So we're not really concerned about that. Part B is the opt-in provision. That would require the county and any other eligible municipality to opt into the process. The process is called the, let me get the title right here, the Lake Ontario and Connected Waterways Assessment Relief Act. What it provides is, and I'm going to look to Kelly to make sure I don't get anything wrong here, the provision allows property owners who have been damaged to file an application to have the assessments on their property reconsidered. And again, it's that storm period between April and July, to have the assessed values adjusted based on the damage to the property. That would impact on the taxes. That may generate some refunds for the property owners that have paid school taxes or town taxes, depending on whether the county adopts it. It has to be adopted by some date in November, which I think provides enough time for the county to adjust its taxes based on whatever work the assessor may do. But again, it's the municipalities have to opt in. For instance, the village would have to opt in, the town would have to opt in. This is in Tucker's district, and the county would have to opt in, as well as the school district. If a municipality or entity chooses not to opt in, then it takes a whole different type of analysis. And I know I've hit this very high level and quickly. What it would require is the county to consider adopting a local law. The local law has to be adopted, as I said earlier, prior to August 24th. Your next meeting is August 22nd. So what that would involve is having a special meeting, for instance, the week of August 7th, where you would set a date and time for a public hearing to be held on August 22nd, and to consider adopting the local law at that point. I know I've hit this pretty fast and at high level. Are there questions?
Mr. Dennison.
This is strictly for the North Country then. this has nothing to do with the storms that has affected the southern end of the county.
That's my understanding, because the storms that affected the southern end of the county occurred after July 1st.
Okay, but what, I guess, where are we with FEMA then? And the other thing is, I don't know, Neil's, oh yeah, he is here. Like I asked him, a lot of what's going on up there is gonna go on next year, even if there's not storms, because it's not all storms that's causing the flooding problems, so.
Whether the state legislature does entertains any enactments for next year, I don't know. It's too early to tell. I understand your question, your point.
Mr. Whitman?
Just a bit of a clarification on a few things. When they review the assessments, is this just going to be a one-time, one-year relief, or is this ongoing and gets reviewed the following year?
I'm going to push your question a little bit, Tucker, because I'm not sure. Let's assume all the municipalities opt in. There's a procedure whereby the homeowner has to apply to the assessor within a certain period of time. The assessor would make a determination. If there are repairs done to the property after that, and I think this is maybe where you're headed, then the assessor, if the repair is made, then the assessor has the ability to reevaluate the properties. They're supposed to do that every year. So, and I'm making a little bit of this up, so presumably if there's a building permit, the town assessor would get access to that and then could change the valuation of the properties based on any additions or changes that were made to the property.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It answers that part. My second part is to play the county legislative role here, not Sterling's representative so